morning, everyone. My name is Kalk Skuman and I'm an entomologist working on macadamias. And this morning we will show you how to scout and also various techniques and also how the bugs look like. First, before we start, I think it's important to know why scouting is so important. As we all know, farmers are in the macadamia business to make money, and the biggest thing that prevents farmers from making a good profit is stink bugs. Stink bugs affect the nut quality, and they're also very difficult to locate in the macadamia orchards. Without the eyes, the management cannot see what is happening in the orchard, and when they have to make a decision if they are going to spray or not, they have to make an informed decision, as it's going to affect the money and of course the quality of the nuts. Most people would be familiar with this technique. This is where we used DDVAP, dichlorphos, to knock down the bugs from the tree. There are various ways how this can be done. This guy is using a motorized knapsack sprayer, but you can also use various types of sprays. The essential thing, I will go through it just now, is to put a sheet out under the tree where you can collect the bugs, and to do it early in the morning. But before we get to that, during each week you must select the trees randomly, so you mustn't use the same trees every week. And just to ensure that you select different trees every week, we've devised these three examples. First, you can walk like an upright M, and then you can walk in a sideways M, and then you select your 10 trees in an orchard like that. Also important is that the bugs, when they fly in from the bush, they tend to sit on the edges of the orchard. First, normally the outer 2 to 3 rows, and that's why we suggest walking along the perimeters, and then from one corner to the other corner, and then you select your trees there. The next slide is just an aerial photograph showing you in an orchard in the Nelspruit area where we have selected the number of trees. Yeah, I think it's just important to make very sure that you're not using the same trees every week. Tasks that we must do for the dichlorphos scouting. I prefer to put out the sheets the evening before. Reason for that is that the bugs normally see you and they would move off. And then it's also very important because the bugs are cold-blooded. They don't move around when the temperatures are still low. And it's to go and spray the knockdown sprays as early as possible. We normally say at first light, when you can see what is happening in the orchard. What we also suggest to the farmers is to try and keep the time from the spray to the initial collection of the bugs constant. Normally we try and work with a time of about an hour. If you wait longer than that or shorter than that, bug numbers may differ. If you wait longer, birds or even ants may come and carry the dead insects away, and you will count a lower number than this actually what you have found on the sheets. During the growing period of macadamias, there's also 3 very distinct times where you're going to do 3 different apply 3 different scouting techniques. The first is from flowering until December, and during this time, normally the trees shed a lot of small nuts. And it's actually very easy during this time to see if there's stink bugs in the orchard or not. And the best way and the most easiest way is to pick up a number of nuts under these trees, cut it open with a knife, and then remove the contents of the nut. In other words, the developing soft shell, as well as a developing kernel from the nut. Be careful when you do that, so as not to make a mark on the inside of the developing husk. And if there were stink bugs present, you will see the feeding marks on the inside of the husk. Also, I think it's important not to pick the 10 nuts up at the same place. Try and pick them up at random places all along the drip zone of the tree. During this time, you can also walk around the tree and look for stink bugs, also for nut borer damage, and also for eggs. Because it's early in the season, you're probably not going to find a lot of that. But what is important is to know how to distinguish damaged nuts, and this photograph will show that to you. You'll see these orange sticky lesions on the inside of the husk, and that normally is a very good indication that these nuts were damaged by the coconut bug. On the other hand, the most notorious pest we have on macadamias, the two-spotted bug, makes these dark holes or dark spots on the inside of the husk. So that's the easiest way of determining if there's stink bugs in the orchard or not. The second period is from December to January. During this time, there should not be any nuts on the ground. If there is nuts on the ground, that tells me something has happened, and the reason for that must then be sought. Again, walk around the trees, inspect the leaves and twigs for eggs and stink bugs. During this time of year, you'll probably find more of them. Because the bug population numbers tends to increase as we go through the season. And it will be also maybe a nice aid for farm management if severely infested trees can be recorded, or the position of the trees can be recorded on an orchard map. As you guys might or might not know, is that stink bugs are not uniformly distributed in an orchard. In other words, each and every tree will not have similar numbers of pest insects. What normally happens is that we have areas in an orchard where a lot of stink bugs occur, and then there will be a lot of areas where not a lot of stink bugs will occur. The last, most important period is from January to harvest. Again, do your walk around, inspect the tree. But during this time of year, we're nearing in the final stages of the macadamia development. During this time of year, there's lots of lots of stink bugs in the orchard. Lots of eggs can be found on the main stem. That's where stink bugs prefer to lay their eggs, but that's not the only place where they will lay eggs. They will also lay eggs on leaves, and they will also lay it on nuts, even old racemes sticking to the tree, young branches, anywhere. So the trick here would be to do a thorough inspection. During this time, we found it also very easy to shake the branches, give it a good shake. And the nymphs, especially this time when there's lots of nymphs during this time of the year, give it a good shake. They will drop to the ground. You can pick them up and count them. This photograph will just show you how we did it. We had a long metal dropper with a hook on the side, on the top. You just hook a branch right on top, give it a good shake, and these guys would fall. This next slide just shows you what we have done. You can also put a piece of irrigation pipe over that to protect the branches, that you don't damage the bark of the branches. And that in short is the various scouting techniques. What we are going to do now is I'm going to show you the most important stink bugs. And I'm going to start off with this guy. This is the two-spotted bug. Which is the most important bug. When there are macadamia nuts on the trees, that's normally from September to autumn. These bugs make out probably 90 to 95% of stink bugs that you will record in an orchard. And what they do is they normally start their life cycle off with the egg stage. Those are the eyes of the stink bug. It's about to come out. If you see this in the orchard, I think it's important to record it on your scout sheet. These eggs are certainly alive, and within a day or two, there will be 14 little stink bugs crawling around the orchard. The next photograph also shows you an egg packet, but in this case, you don't see the red eyes through the eggshell. This basically just tells you that these eggs are slightly younger. Before I go on, I think it's important to show you guys that you can count the eggs. In this species, there are normally 14 eggs, 1-4. and each egg packet. But if you see this, it means that the eggs have hatched, they're all out, and these eggshells can stay on the trees for a long time. So if you see this, don't record it on the scout sheet. It's not necessary. Last eggs I'm going to show you is parasitized eggs. These eggs are no longer going to develop and turn into stink bugs. So again, I think it's important to write this down on the scout sheet. Important here is to know that they are tiny, 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 not big, and to have a look at the color pattern, because the color pattern will change. As you can see here, stage number 2 normally have these red stripes on the edges and a bluish, blackish coloring on the upper part of the stink bug. Stage number 3, same basic coloring, but it differs slightly. This little guy can push his mouth straight through macadamia nut, mature macadamia nut, and cause economic damage. It's also important to know that there are differences in color sometimes, although this is a 4th stage. I'll show you some other photographs later on. They're more greener. This guy is much more yellower. And at this stage, I want to show you how the stink bug feeds. The stink bug doesn't have teeth and a mouth like humans or other insects even. Instead of that, they have a long needle-like apparatus, a proboscis, that they stick inside the fruit, or in this case nuts. And the reason why this stink bug is so important and so dangerous for us is the length of this mouth. As you can see, this is quite long. You can see this is the end of a macadamia nut, the fruit, that little stalk at the end of the macadamia nut. And the next slide will show it even better, because here you'll see the long mouth. See that loop there is part of the mouth, and it goes all the way nearly up to the end. And I always tell the guys, if the stink bug straightens out that loop, which they can do from time to time, the mouth is so long that it actually sticks out in the back like an exhaust pipe. So certainly these guys will do damage. I promise to show you the other color variant, the more greener color variant. As you can see, remember the previous one was much more yellow. And then we get to stage number 5. And stage number 5, very easy to identify. You see the wing buds that are starting to develop. During this stage, the coloring is much more green, so the base color of the stink bug is green. Important thing is here is to know how the adult looks like. We all know it's a 2-spotted bug. Where the name comes from are these 2 spots here. These black and white spots on the back side of the stink bug. They're fairly large stink bugs, and it's also important here to note that the edge of the stink bug sticking out under the wings there is yellow, and there's no black markings. But if you're unsure, as always, it's the easiest thing in the world to turn the stink bug upside down, and then you have a look at the mouth part. And you'll see this mouth is quite long. It extends all the way up to its abdomen, up to its stomach there in the bottom. The second most important bug is the coconut bug. And I got this diagram, and this will show you, this basically shows you the life cycle of the coconut bug, but remember the life cycle of the coconut bug and all the other stink bugs are fairly similar. So essentially all of them start with the egg stage, then 5 immature stages or baby stages, and then you get the adult one. Adult then lays eggs, and the cycle starts all over again. Each of these stages lasts probably, depending on temperature, from a week to 10 days. If it's cool, it could be a bit less. And then the adult can survive for quite a number of weeks. The life cycle, like I said, kicks off with the egg stage. Remember, the 2-spotted bug lays the eggs in packets, and this guy lays the egg single. This egg, you see this green thing where the egg was laid on, that's a green bean. I want to show you the various stages. I think in this case it's important to know how small it is, the relative size of the insects. You can see this is a macadamia nut. and this is the first stage. It's that one there. So they're not big insects. Then carry on, stage number 2. They're slightly bigger. Remember, this guy is sitting here on a macadamia nut. Stage number 3, even more bigger. And you notice the coloring of the bug and also the general features of the bug change as they go on through their development. Stage number 4. Here you can already see wing buds coming out. And then the final stage, stage number 5. Interesting thing, I always ask the guys if they know where the stinky smell comes from a stink bug. And this is where it comes from. These are the sting glands. And the sting glands actually secrete an oil, and it's the smell of the oil that you smell if you disturb a sting bug. When the bug becomes mature, those glands move from the backside to the sides, and you see that dark patch there. That's where the smell now comes out. This is a mature sting bug, coconut bug, and you can see that is the mouth of the coconut bug. It's busy pushing the mouth inside the nut, and this guy can damage nuts up to maturity. It can penetrate the shell, it can penetrate the husk with ease. So I think it's important for you guys to know, to be wide awake during December and also during early part of January. Farmers must know if these guys are in the orchard or not. And another thing I must mention is that these guys are not easy to spot in the orchard. These stink bugs that I'm going to show you now, they are still important in that they can do damage in some parts of the nut, especially on the sides of the nut where the shell is a bit thinner than on the bottom and the top of the nut. You are not probably going to see any of the eggs or any of the nymph stages, the immature stages in the orchards, because most of them do not breed in macadamias. Yet I'm going to show you how these nymphs look like, because on some occasions I have picked up nymph stages, but they're not very common. Now, as you can see, this is the eggs of the green vegetable bug. The next slide, I'm just quickly going to go through these, is the first nymph stage. Stage number 2, little black insect. Stage number 3, they get more white spots. Stage number 4 becomes a bit more greener and more colorful. Stage number 5, actually very pretty. You have that pink edge along the sides of the stink bug. And then importantly, because this is what you're going to see in the macadamia orchard, this is an adult. Remember previously we referred to those spots there. Although you can see spots, it's not very prominent. And as I've mentioned, these guys are more common from autumn to spring. And although you'll find the odd one throughout the year, you're not going to find a lot of them. Most of the time you'll see them during the cooler parts of the year. The second bug that I will show you that's very common, especially in the Nelspruit area, is the yellow-edged bug. It's very closely related to the green vegetable bug. You'll see this is the egg stage. I'll quickly go through the nymphal stages. This is stage number 2. Looks very similar to the green vegetable bug. Stage number 3, you have yellow spots developing. Stage number 4, more yellow, and then eventually stage number 5. The adult looks very, very similar to the green vegetable bug, but the bug is slightly bigger and a bit more shinier. Again, you look at the edge of the bug, it's a bit more yellow, more orangey, also with the black stripes along the various segments. And the golden rule I always tell the guys, if you're not sure which bug it is, the thing is turn it upside down and have a look at the mouth part. You see in this case the mouth part is very short. It only extends up to the third pair of legs, where if you look at the two-spotted bug, the mouth reached all the way up to the second last abdominal segment. Same as with the green vegetable bug, you'll pick these guys up in autumn to spring. The second group of insects that I think is very important is various moths. We have three kinds of moths affecting macadamias. First one is very prolificous. It feeds on a lot of crops. It's a false codling moth. The larva of the false codling moth, the mature larva, is pinkish. You can see the relative size. This guy is on the outside of a macadamia husk. The second one that's very important is a macadamia nut borer. Again, in this case, it doesn't have a tuft. It has like a saddle-like structure on the behind the head. Easy way to identify them. The larvae are a bit different. As you can see, the false codling moth was pinkish. This guy is brownish with black spots. Damage they do, very similar. The last moth that we pick up in some areas, especially where there's lots of lychees in the area, it's a lychee moth. And the best way to identify the lychee moth is to look for this black patch on the hind wings. And if you look at the larvae, looks very similar. The mature larvae looks very similar to the false codling moth. Only difference here is that these larvae might be slightly bigger than the false codling moth. What is important though is to understand the life cycle of these kind of insects. The damage they do and their life history is very similar. So I'm just going to show you one. These black arrows point towards where eggs were laid. This probably was a false codling moth. And what happens now is that when these eggs hatch, the young larvae would crawl a few millimeters on the outer surface of the nut and then burrow into the nut. Some cases they don't even do that. They tend to burrow straight from the egg into the nut. This is the only time, only window of opportunity where farmers can use any kind of chemical. So once that larva is in the nut, it's no longer possible to do any form of chemical control. So it's very important that you guys check for eggs, especially from late November to early January, because that's the time when they tunnel into the nut. That's the time you guys must be wide awake. Now there are two ways how these larvae can damage macadamia nut. And the first one is obvious. When the shell is still very soft, these guys tunnel straight through the husk into the kernel, through the shell into the kernel of the nut, and they devour the kernel. And the second way is that it actually destroys the tissue, the connective tissue that links the plant to the nut. And you see this kind of damage that you normally have severs all the connective tissue, so that nut can no longer be nourished by the plant. In some cases, where damage is severe, like in this slide, trees will abort these nuts. It will fall to the ground, it will rot, and it will not be counted as damage. This is also why it's important, if you walk in the orchards, especially during December, and you see nuts laying on the ground, to pick it up and determine the cause of the abortion, of the drop of the nuts. When their life cycle is complete, these guys make these holes on the outer surface of the husk. They would spin a silken thread and they would descend into the leaf litter, onto the soil. In the soil they would pupate, and then the life cycle would start again. The last group of insects that is important is thrips. And at this moment the jury is still out if it's a problem or not a problem. It can also damage the nuts in two ways. The first way is it will turn these nice green looking nuts into brown looking nuts. And at this moment current research indicates that it's probably not a problem for us, a commercial problem. But what is a commercial problem is if they start feeding on the new flush, on the new leaves, like in this case. This could even be a mite that does this kind of damage. But this damage you'll see here is most definitely thrip damage. And the other effect that is unknown is the effect on flowers. These are tiny little insects, and they tend to occur on flowers. A lot of the thrips on flowers is not a problem, and may even help with the pollination of the flowers. As you can see in this case, most of these flowers fail to set, and there's a very good chance that thrips was involved there. If you look at the young nuts, they start to turn black or brownish, and we think that these would probably abort. What we have here is an example of the scout sheet that you can fill in. This normally is very easy. Photographs there on top refer to the various pests. On the bottom you'll see the numbers 1 to 10, and that is basically the trees. And you just fill in how much of each pest you've seen per tree. And this is the end of the Scout course. I hope you guys have enjoyed the course, and I hope you guys have honed your scouting skills. And I want to say all the best with scouting and the hard work that's laying ahead. And we would like to see you here in future, if possible. Thank you.